You know, guys, I've done over 2,100 video reports over the past 4.5 years. And yesterday, I got the single most likes for a single video report in that time period. So I figure it's because either A, you really, really missed me over the past 5 weeks. I highly doubt that. Or perhaps you were really appreciative of the fact that I got you on the Houston Texans because I told you had to be a fool to bet the Raiders yesterday. I mean, that's always a possibility, but then considering how many free NFL winners I've given you this season, why would one more at the start of the playoffs be any different? Or perhaps you got a real kick out of the fact that I told you that everybody ought to have a grabber. Or maybe it's just simply you got the facts and you understood when I was talking about the Jedi mind trick. In reference to, oops, the grabber just hit my video camera. I'll tell you what, the grabber is a great thing, but you know what the one thing about the grabber is? It doesn't like to stay folded. They really ought to put a latch on the damn grabber because sometimes the grabber just has a mind of its own. You put it down like this and boom, that damn thing pops up. You got to put it down and just make sure it's out of the way. So let me just readjust my camera. But you got the Jedi mind reference from Jay and Silent Bob. Yes, sir, you got that one. When the grabber falls and you have no way to get it and you got to use the Jedi mind reference. But, and by the way, Jay and Silent Bob, I think of all the Kevin Smith movies, that is absolutely the best one. Yeah, I love Mallrats, by the way, as well. And but Jay and Silent Bob, definitely the best. And I can deal with Chasing Amy, but I could never get into Clerks. I mean, Clerks, I could deal with it a little. Clerks 2, couldn't stand it. Just couldn't get into it at all. And really, Clerks and Clerks 2, just nothing. Couldn't get into it. And I know that if you ask, 99 out of 100 Kevin Smith fans of the series of films, they all love Clerks. I'm just the exception to that rule. Just can't get into it. Speaking of a series of movies, Harold and Kumar. I love White Castle. I love the Christmas movie. Can't get into the Guantanamo Bay movie at all. Although I will say that the George Bush sequence late in the movie, I do think that is particularly hilarious. I think the Christmas movie, though, however, I'll tell you what, I don't care if you're stoned, if you're drunk, if it's 3 a.m. in the morning and you just got in, if you put on the 3D glasses and watch it in 3D, that is just a classic film. You got to watch that one as well. One more movie reference as well. If you love Deadpool, if you like Ryan Reynolds, and if you like Deadpool, it's because of Ryan Reynolds. That's the only reason why. So my son's home at college, and I told him that you have to go back. And if you've never watched the movie as well, you've got to do it as well. You've got to get the 2002 release from National Lampoon, Van Wilder. Because if you watch Van Wilder and you see Ryan Reynolds in that movie, you see the genesis of Deadpool. Because you see Ryan Reynolds in Van Wilder and you go, hey, that is Deadpool. You see the exact genesis of why he was Deadpool, 14 years later. What he did in between, how Green Lantern got made, God help us all. Some of the other direct that he did as well. But you see Van Wilder and you see Now, of course, you have to put up with Tara Reid in the movie, but hey, listen, you can't have everything. Okay, so anyway, we're going to talk football, I think, today in this. I'm telling you, it's the drugs, guys. You have no idea what it took to get to this point to do this video report this morning. Anyway, so I gave you the winner on the Texans yesterday, and then foolishly yesterday I decided to outsmart myself. Sometimes you do that in this business. You outsmart yourself as a gambler, and you think, hey, I'm going to give you, as the free play, the Texans, which was a no-brainer. Although, really, at the site, a hell of a lot of the guys, I got to tell you, a hell of a lot of them went ahead and foolishly bet the Raiders and foolishly bet the under. Don't know why. Shawn Michaels didn't. Chuck O'Brien didn't. But I don't think anybody else had the Texans yesterday. Everybody else that had a side or the total in the game had the wrong on both. I went ahead and used a major college basketball release on West Virginia, which was a brilliant play if they had only scored one more bucket. Because, when you're laying 13.5 and you only win by 12, well, that's a major, major problem. So I've got to get my money back today. And I think the best bet on the board today is actually Pittsburgh and Miami. This Green Bay and Seattle. This Green Bay, New York game is difficult, to say the least. Now, listen, yesterday we had both favorites cover. So let's go back and first talk about the wild card results over the years, and then let's talk about this game and how I think it's going to play out. So yesterday, again, you've had going back to 1978, and if you exclude the 1982 strike season, you have had 128 total games played in that stretch. You have now had 57 of those games decided by 2 touchdowns or more, courtesy of Seattle. You have had 57 of them decided by 2 touchdowns or more. You have had 17 of those games decided by 8 to 13-point margins, courtesy of the Houston Texans. So what does that mean percentage-wise? You have had 57.8% of them decided by 8-point or more margins. You have had 44.5% of them decided by 2 touchdowns or more. In other words, guys, you've had blowouts more often than not as compared to close games. Here's something else that I came across in doing more research that I didn't have yesterday at my disposal. You have had 10 teams entering wild card weekends with winning streaks of 5 games or more since 2000. And you have 2 of these teams in these situations today. The Steelers coming in with a 7-game winning streak, Packers coming in with a 6-game winning streak. So going back to 2000, what has happened to those 10 teams? You've had 3 teams lose immediately. You've had 4 teams win 1 game and then lose out the following week. You've had just two of those 10 teams advance to the conference championship game. And quickly, tell me the one team that has advanced and won it all since the 2000 campaign. The one team that has won it all. Can we cue up, please, the Jeopardy theme song? Guys, can you cue up the music? No, I guess they're not going to cue up the music today. Oh, well, come on. Have you figured it out yet? Guys, the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Ravens, they won 7 straight then the 2000 season. They won 4 more games, and they won the Super Bowl. So, there you go. Here's another one for you. Since that 2000 season, the Wildcard round has featured 39 rematches that have occurred from a regular season game to the postseason. 19 times you have had the regular season winner win the second time around. 14 times the loser got revenge. The other 6 times you had division rivals that split the regular season series, so it didn't matter. You had a revenge winner one way or another in the postseason. So let's talk about this game here. Green Bay, 5.5-point number. It's a tough number. Ultimately what happened in the first game, I don't really know if it really matters because you had 2 different teams that met that first time. Listen, Eddie Lacy ran 11 times for 81 yards for the Packers before leaving that game with an injury. Eddie Lacy's long gone. This is not the same Packers team. Aaron Rodgers was not the same Aaron Rodgers we have seen over the final 7 games of the regular season, where he was simply spectacular with 18 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. We saw a Giants team early in the season that simply couldn't run the ball. Well, we have seen the Giants here later in the season suddenly develop a ground game because they have relied more on UCLA rookie Paul Perkins. Hell, he had 102 yards rushing against Washington in a mean-nothing game for the Giants last week. But they go to Washington, Redskins in a must-win situation, and what do? They lose to the Giants at home. So that first game doesn't mean anything. Packers ran for 147 yards. Well, they're not that team anymore. But the Packers have changed. They have turned to Ty Montgomery, a former wide receiver, turning into their number 1 running back. Well, he's had some decent games running, but what he's really turned into is giving Aaron Rodgers a safety valve out of the backfield, another guy that defenses have to focus on. It's bad enough that they have to worry about all the guys that he has to throw downfield, but now Montgomery out of the backfield. Over the past 6 weeks, he's been tied for the number 1 pass catcher in the NFL. I think 44 receptions in that time period. Now, let's also go back to that game and let's consider the status of the Giants secondary. In that first meeting, 2 of their top 3 cornerbacks were beaten up injury-wise. Their number 2 cornerback, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, was limited because of a groin pull, and he was beaten. by Rodgers in that game. Their number 3 guy, Eli Apple, only lasted 7 plays before he had to exit with an injury. They are both healthy. On the flip side, Giants absolutely got no pass rush in that first meeting. They got no sacks, and they only hit Aaron Rodgers once. Well, they had Jason Pierre-Paul then. Well, Pierre-Paul's out still. So what the Giants have done more since Pierre-Paul has been out over the past 5 weeks is they have blitzed even more to compensate. Can they get to Rodgers with the way he is playing now? I had mentioned that Rodgers, with those 18 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions in the past 7 games, I had mentioned that the Packers have won 6 straight games to end the season, and their offense have scored 27, 21, 38, 30, 38, and 31 points in those games. But, and you knew there was a but coming, who did they score those points against? The Eagles? Let me just get them in order. They did that against the Eagles, the Texans, the Seahawks at home, Chicago, Minnesota, and Detroit. Not exactly murderer's row. Then you look at the Giants. Listen, I don't know how the hell they lost to the Eagles. I still don't understand that game. It was just one of those games. Eli Manning had an awful game, 3 interceptions, and the Eagles beat him that day. But you beat the Cowboys twice this year, and you shut down the Cowboys' ground game in both of those contests. You took care of business against Dallas, the best team other than the New England Patriots in the NFL, and you beat them twice. Pretty damn impressive, if you ask me. So I go back to this number, and I look at 5.5. And as much as I love the Packers at home, I still have to go back and what did the Giants do? Remember, in the playoffs, went back in 2011, and again, 2 different teams. I don't think the Giants are going to go in there and win 37-20 this time around, like they did in the divisional round of 2011. But doesn't this game seem to you to have 3 to 4 points written all over it one way or another? I don't think the Packers lose this game. But again, to me, maybe this is 24-20. Maybe this is 21-17. Maybe this is 31-28. I just don't see 5.5 points. That's just a strange, funny number to me for what I think is a 3 to 4 point game. So although I like the Packers, I just don't see this being a shootout going in the Packers' favor and winning it by a wide margin because I think the Giants' defense is that good. And we know that the Packers' secondary has been burnt toast all season long. And Eli Manning, yeah, he had the bad game against the Eagles. But how many bad games has Eli Manning had this season? Now, did he play particularly well in the first game against the Packers? No, he did not. Did Odell Beckham Jr. have a good game in that first contest? No, he didn't. 5 catches for 57 yards. But let's just remember, Odell wasn't having fun playing football back then. Odell's been having fun the second half of the season. Giants also ran for only 43 yards the first time around. Their ground production has gotten much better the second half of the season because Perkins has been much more productive as well and made Rashard Jennings more of an afterthought in the Giants' offense. So I think all those things add up to making the Giants a live dog here in this second game today. So I'm going to go with the Giants in this one. And again, Packers have won 6 straight games, but they haven't played a team with a defense as good as the Giants along the way. Because remember, the Lions, the Vikings, the Bears, the Seahawks, the Texans, the Eagles, and the Seahawks game was at Lambeau, and the Seahawks did not play as well defensively on the road as they did at home all season long. None of those teams match up defensively like the Giants team that they're going to play today. So I'm going to grab 5.5 points. That's the way I'm going to go with your complimentary play today. In terms of the over-under, I don't have a clue. Don't have a clue in terms of which way to tell you to go in that contest. I wish you well, guys, and we'll talk again tomorrow with that little game between Alabama and Clemson. That'll be Monday's agenda. Good luck, everybody.